Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted better relations at home, work, or as a leader, then do we have the Art of Connection show for you. Today I'll be talking with best-selling author and visionary Michael Gelb, a pioneer in the field of creative thinking, a 5th degree black belt in Aikido, the author of 14 books, including Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, and his latest, perhaps the most kind and compassionate take on leadership and relationships I have ever read, The Art of Connection. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about 7 relationship building skills every leader and you need to know. That, plus we'll talk about 2 guys from Harrison, altruism and snakes, gotcha, the importance of the Costanza syndrome, why you want to be a glowworm, who in the world are mental and dental, can't make this stuff up, and what on earth does bison, cranberries, and bacon have to do with anything? So welcome to the show, Michael. Are you ready to shine?
Absolutely, man. That is by far the most glowing and brilliant introduction I have ever received on any show. Magnificent.
Woohoo! Once again, my job is done.
You nailed it.
Beautiful. So on that, we should go into a really serious topic to begin with. How did you become a professional juggler with Bob Dylan and the Rolling Stones?
Well, I saw somebody juggle when I was 20. Mm-hmm. And it was a time in my life I was actually looking for my means of artistic expression. I didn't have musical talent. I didn't have what people normally call artistic talent. I couldn't draw or paint particularly well. I suppose I could have been good at the theater, but it just didn't really appeal to me because life seemed so theatrical. And then I saw somebody juggle, and it looked to me like moving sculpture. And I thought, I really want to learn that. So it turned out that this fellow was not as good a teacher as he was a juggler. Because when I asked him to show me, he said, take these balls, throw them up, don't let any of them drop. And that led to lots of drops and lots of failure and mistakes. But then I had a real epiphany, and I realized that the secret of learning how to juggle wasn't focusing on trying to grasp after the balls. Instead, I realized if I could maintain my poise and my balance and focus on the throw and maintain the rhythm of my breathing, well, miraculously, the ball started landing in my hands. And I decided to use juggling as a methodology to test out everything I was learning about centering and balance. I was training as a teacher of the Alexander technique of body-mind coordination at the time. So I thought, well, this is a great means to see if I'm working on coordination, grace, and poise. If this really works, I should be able to get really good at juggling. So I did. I mean, I developed all these original tricks, and then I could do 4 balls and 5 balls, and I was passing clubs, and I was doing fire. And I met this fellow who was a juggler. He was also the science editor of Reuters in Europe at the time. Oh, wow. And we formed a juggling act, and we used to practice in Hyde Park in London. So the fellow comes up to us one day when we're practicing and says, I would love to have you guys juggle on stage with Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones this evening. What do you think? We'll give you 50 pounds each, which was a lot of money back then. So we said, okay. So that night we were on stage at Earl's Court. Mick and the Stones were doing their thing, and we were juggling in between their sets. So they invited us to the Nebworth Rock Festival, where there were 100,000 plus people, and we juggled on a stage shaped like Mick Jagger's mouth. No kidding.
That's a true, I love that. I absolutely love that. So if we go from juggling in the Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger's mouth, it's quite the segue. When did you get into, and it'd be much earlier as my guess, martial arts?
Well, it was all around the same time, because it's another art form. I mean, you don't really think of martial arts as an art form because, you're at a party and somebody says, oh, here's my CD that I made of my musical art. And somebody says, oh, here's my painting. And if you're a martial artist, what do you say? Well, boink, here's the latest. Here's my latest creation. Bam. Oh, sorry. But I always was fascinated by the ability to maintain poise and centeredness in the face of stress. That was best exhibited to me by Aikidoists and Tai Chi masters. And it seemed almost impossible to learn, but then I found a great teacher, and then I found a whole series of great teachers, and then I became a teacher, and now I teach other teachers. So it's been a wonderful stream that supports everything else I do.
Beautiful. And we'll probably double back around because I want to talk about balance, about centering, about so many of these concepts, because I think they thread a needle through everything. But first I want to go to an earlier concept, a book that you read at 15, which if people haven't read it, they think it's kind of a manipulative book based on the title, but it's anything but it. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Yes,
that classic Dale Carnegie book. It's Dale Carnegie had a lot on the ball. He really knew a lot about how to work effectively with people. And even though he doesn't express in an open way the depths of the inner game of communication, he focuses on what we might call a lot of extrinsic behavioral shifts that people can make to win friends and influence people. Everything he teaches is based on deep understanding, and it's really quite effective and a useful book in everyone's library. What I've aimed to do is take those kinds of ideals and practices and methodologies and bring a lot more depth to support some of the brilliance that he originated.
Was that book a guiding force? You went on to study, I guess, where Freud and Jung first came to the U.S., and then you're trying to develop positive psychology before there is positive psychology.
Well, because in those days you had to study disease. There was no study of health. I wanted to study creativity, human possibility, what today we call emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence. And those concepts didn't really exist when I went to college. So I had to make up my own path. And fortunately, I did.
Woohoo!
Yay!
So let's go from there. And before we dive into your book, The Art of Connection, let's talk about the connection between The Art of the Connection and an earlier book, which probably sets you well on your path, is Think Like Leonardo da Vinci.
Yes, thank you. How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. He was my childhood hero, along with Superman. And my grandmother was from Italy, and she was a painter. And she told me stories about Leonardo da Vinci, and it just seemed mythological. I mean, here was this person who could do everything. He was an artist and science, a great athlete, and a wonderful human being by all accounts as well, with a great sense of humor and philosophical and highly ethical. So I thought, this is just the ideal human. And I remember when I realized that Superman was only a comic book character, but the good news is Leonardo was real. And in my early 20s, I started to get invited to groups around the world to help them understand how to think more creatively, be more innovative, develop coordination of mind and body, be more centered under stress, be better at leading groups. And it was natural for me to begin just sharing stories that I remembered from my grandfather about Leonardo da Vinci. And I read his notebooks, I read books about him, and I would tell Da Vinci tales in my classes, and people always loved it.
Yeah.
So I just thought, well, what if I reread all of his notebooks, looking for the advice that he was giving to his students on how they could develop their creativity?
Yeah.
And what if I translated that into contemporary terms and then put in lots of exercises and practices so that people could really embody Da Vinci's approach to life and learning. So that was the birth of How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. It came out 19 years ago, and it really struck a chord. It's in 25 languages, and I get some of those pings before, people saying, hey, I love your book, How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci.
Beautiful. And so how does that tie in, or maybe what is Da Vinci's connection as well to the art of connection?
Yes, so it's a wonderful, wonderful question. Thank you for asking, because Da Vinci is probably the most creative person who ever lived. And it's wonderful for people to realize that they can learn to be more creative, and that they can learn to generate more ideas in less time. They can learn to make new connections between their ideas. Mm-hmm. They can learn to raise their baseline of creative energy. They can understand the phases of the creative thinking process. And at the same time, I work with real organizations who are genuinely trying to be more creative and innovative. And if you want your creative idea to really happen, whether you work in a big company or you're just a solo entrepreneur or an artist, whoever you are, you're going to have to build relationships with other people. And in the art of connection, I aim to share the most important things I've learned about how to do that in the 38 years that I've been working with people on how to be more creative. So the relationship piece is essential.
Beautiful. And I'm hearing you say that, and I haven't read this book yet. I believe I'm going to have to read it and put you on the spot and invite you back to talk about it.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
You have got it. So let's talk about a story that kind of sandwiches your book, which is, can you tell us about the leaders, and we're talking about the art of connection here, can you tell us about the leaders of and what is Wheels Up?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I was down in Houston, I guess it was a little over a year ago. I was speaking for this organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. Mm-hmm. And the sponsor of this event is a fabulous guy who runs a big private equity company, really lovely fellow. So he would always invite me out for dinner when I come down there, take me to some great place. He knows I love great food. He knows I love wine. He gives me the wine list. He's a real sweetheart. And he's a festive kind of guy, very generous, very social, really good at building relationships. So he said to me, hey, I have some guys I'm doing a deal with. Do you mind if I invite them to our dinner? So I said, of course not. Bring them along. And the truth is, I was a little tired by the time I got there. But one of the guys from this company, Wheels Up, it's a private aviation service. They're trying to democratize jet travel so that many more people can take advantage of it, private jet travel. And this guy was so friendly and so contactful and connecting. The first thing he said to me, he said something, it's in the book, he said something like, we are probably the people with the lowest IQ and the lowest GPA and SAT scores who've ever sold a company to Warren Buffett, because they started this company when they sold the previous company to Buffett's conglomerate. And I just thought, this is what it's really all about. Here's this guy. You can see why he's so successful. You can see why people want to avail themselves of his service. They want to learn more because he's just so likable and friendly and caring in a genuine way. And it uplifted my energy. And usually that's my job. Usually I'm uplifting other people's energy, but it was a wonderful opportunity for someone's skill at the art of connection to affect me. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm writing this book called The Art of Connection. And he just almost jumped up and he said, that's what we're all about. So the company's called Wheels Up. And I thought I'd tell that story. And I thought Wheels Up is a really cool way to start a book.
Absolutely. And you say something early, you're talking about them. You say the leaders transmit a positive energy that is uplifting and contagious. What does that mean?
Well, we do know we used to know this just anecdotally. We used to just know this because it's common sense and we can observe it and see it and feel it ourselves. But now there is research validation for the notion that emotions are contagious. Mm-hmm. Emotions are contagious. So it's really important to be the curator of what do you catch and what do you spread. How do you catch happiness and joy and courage and delight and gratitude? How do you spread those things? And how do you avoid catching commiseration and blame and rage and angst and worry and misery? It's pretty, those things, there's a pandemic of those things around. So you have to be really careful that you don't just get caught up in that, and that you are very carefully choosing what informs your emotion and how you then translate that to enrich the lives of everybody you interact with.
Sounds like Aikido.
Or juggling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You say that attention and personal energy are the new currencies.
Hey, 10 years ago, oil companies had the biggest capitalization, and now it's companies that basically deal in attention. It's Facebook and it's Google. And what they're dealing with is getting our attention so they can sell us advertising. I mean, seriously. And they're really good at it. So we also have to be really careful that our attention and our energy do not get hijacked by our social media and our devices and all of the onslaught there. And at the same time, of course, we want to take full advantage of this world-changing, fabulous technology. I mean, how cool is it? You have all of human knowledge, boom, at your fingertip, but you also have all of the worst impulses that humanity has ever collected trolling around, trying to suck you into this morass from which you may never emerge if you get caught in it. So there's just a little picture of our world today. So what does that require? It requires consciousness. It requires intentionality. It requires clarity and purpose. And if you're not working on those things, then you are being pulled into the morass of habit without necessarily even being aware of it.
When I finish this interview, I'll go to upload it to my editor. I'll say thank you, and then I'll go to upload it to my editor. And as I open up my web browser, it'll say, shut off the computer and go outside.
That's great. Beautiful.
It's a perfect present reminder that the electronics, it's really a double-edged sword. Get in, get what you need to do, and then get back out to the real world.
Big time. Well, my buddy Brian Johnson runs a great business. He wrote this book called Philosopher's Notes, and he summarizes, he's trying to summarize basically every great book that's ever been written. And he does wonderful reports on them. And I met him because he read How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, and he interviewed me for that many, many years ago. So I interviewed him for The Art of Connection because I know he earns his living. He's on. He is connected and wired all the time. Mm-hmm. So he has instituted what he calls a digital sunset. And at sunset, I mean, he just shuts everything down. You can't reach the guy. He's got 2 kids now. He says, I unplug and I get real.
Woohoo!
Right? Big time. So, but it's a discipline. It's a discipline because it's very seductive, especially, if you run your own business. Could be a client, could be an opportunity. So it'll still be there in the morning. Mm-hmm. Go for a walk in nature, have a glass of wine, look in the eyes of your beloved, and have a conversation.
Awesome. Let's talk about another guiding principle of yours. And I might butcher my Latin here, but conjugere ad solvendum.
Yes. Well done, actually.
Thank you.
It means connect before solving. Connect before solving. And it just so happens that one of my close connections is a Latin scholar. So whenever I'm making up a motto, I always check with him.
Very
to
good.
make sure that it's accurate. It's good to have a Latin scholar. I can text him or write to him or Skype with him pretty much any time. He's on call. He's also happens to be the chess columnist of the London Times, and he's an all-around super genius who he probably knows more than Google, and he gets you the accurate answer or translation right away. So it's just good. It's a really good guy to know. And what it means, it's one of the fundamental principles of the art of connection. And it is that before we look for a solution, if there's an issue or a problem or a challenge, we want to come together and come up with new ideas for business development or how to better serve our customers or refine our technology or close a sale, whatever it happens to be. Connect first with the other human beings before trying to get the answer or the solution. Remember the soul. Remember the humanity. Generate rapport, simpatico, whatever, it's in every language, but it's becoming something of a lost art. Everybody's so busy. They're so results oriented and transactional. And there are two powerful reasons why this is so important. The first is that it's just intrinsically enriching. Your life will be richer. You will be happier. You will be more fulfilled. You will have a better life if you take the time and make it part of just how you function, that you honor and connect with people first. And by the way, you'll come up with better solutions. Mm-hmm. You'll be better positioned to implement them. You'll think better, and you'll bring out better thinking in the other people if you connect first. So that's the essence of that motto.
And part of the essence of that is a long lost art that you're trying to revive that I think we need now more than ever: empathy.
Empathy, we need it now more than ever. We really do. And it's helpful for people to know that there's an empathy scale. And at one end of the empathy scale are hyper-empathic people. Mm-hmm. So they feel everyone else's feelings, and sometimes they have trouble asserting themselves, standing up for themselves. They can easily be taken advantage of. The other extreme, we have psychopaths who have no empathy at all. And what's weird is this is actually, we think of that as evil. It's easy to make a judgment about it. But if we think of it just in terms of the fact that if we showed a group of average people mm-hmm. a video of something terrible happening to someone or to an animal, or we get visceral reactions. If we see someone being tortured or hurt or wounded or murdered or whatever, a normal person gets a visceral reaction. We can measure it. A psychopath has no reaction. They do not. It just doesn't go to the same part of the brain when they see something like that. It's not that they've necessarily cultivated the art of being evil. It may just be that they're wired that way. Mm-hmm. Just as this person over here is wired to feel everything. I was up doing my Tai Chi practice on the hill behind my home. Mm-hmm. I do it so I can watch the bridge and the river. And a truck drove by, and it just brushed against a tree. Now, I'm normally, I'm pretty right in the middle of this spectrum naturally. Mm-hmm. I've been cultivating the ability to move into total empathy, because I think if you can be in total empathy and still keep the your sense of identity and still know how to move in this direction when you need to.
Yeah.
This is where you experience the sense of oneness and love for all beings, which is enlightenment. Anyway, so I'm playing with this spectrum. I'm doing my Qigong practice. I see this truck brush against the tree, and I feel what the tree is feeling. And I just had empathy with hyper empaths in that moment, because wow, if you're walking around and you're feeling other beings suffering so profoundly, it's on the one hand, these are the most enlightened people. On the other hand, a lot of these people have trouble functioning, and it's a fine line between those two modalities. Mm-hmm. So way over here on this side, it's really fascinating. I interviewed these guys. They wrote this book called The Good Psychopath's Guide to Success. And one of them is a psychologist, and the other was the British equivalent of a Navy SEAL. Mm-hmm. And he says, the secret to my success is I'm a psychopath. He says, but don't worry, I'm a good psychopath. So now, just like a hyper empath, if they can harness that ability and know how to navigate this world and shift over here when they need to, the good psychopath is able to be on this side of the spectrum, but somehow they've cultivated the ability to remember that others are affected by their actions, and they do their actions in a higher ethical framework. So if you're a Navy SEAL and you're in a position, a life or death situation where your job is to end the life of someone who might end the lives of the people that you are protecting, you've got to be able to do that without inappropriate empathy at that moment. Because if you're sitting there feeling what the person is feeling as you're slitting their throat, you die, and then so do the people you're protecting. So that's an extreme of what a positive psychopath might have to do in defense of a higher ideal. So having said all that, when you realize that there's this spectrum, and that freedom is the ability to move along the spectrum, so you're not just stuck wherever your habitual brain wiring has you stuck. But if you need to learn more bold, assertive action, you can learn some of the skills of a SEAL. And if you need to learn more compassion and empathy, which a lot of people in the highly functional transactional world need to learn, you can learn that. And when you do, this is the best part of it, is when you do, you're going to be a better leader, you're going to be a better innovator, you'll be way more creative. Because ultimately, leadership, innovation, creativity are all about empathy. Leaders meet people's needs. And more senior leaders are more and more skilled at meeting the needs of many constituencies with tremendous complexities. And more than ever today, we need positive notions of how to do that.
Beautiful. And I want to go into some of the relationships, some of the 7 relationship building skills from a synchronicity point of view. Today's show, I think it's like episode 708 or something, is John David Mann, co-author of the Go Giver series. And we're talking about his book, The Recipe. But what he told me is 6 of his books, and I haven't read these 6 yet, are co-authored with lessons from a Navy SEAL. That's what's airing today. Of all days, we're talking Navy SEALs here. I'm just fascinated. I love it when those things come up.
We got the seal of approval for our talk on empathy.
Da-dun-dun. Okay, so let's go to number 1, embracing humility. What does that really mean?
Well, we could say what it really means is that if you think you know it all, first of all, you're probably not even going to pick up the book in the first place. So that's why we put it in the first chapter, because you say, oh, I thought I knew how to communicate. I thought I was a great listener. But all the people that you know really would like you to read this book, whoever you are. Because humility inspires curiosity. Mm-hmm. Curiosity inspires continuous learning. And if you're serious about developing the art of connection, it begins with the humility that generates the curiosity that generates the continuous learning. So the popular word, the word a lot of people use today is vulnerability. But I don't like that word because vulnerare is the root of the word, and it means to wound. Mm-hmm. And I looked up the synonyms, and synonyms for vulnerable include sucker and sitting duck.
Oh no!
So I can't tell my clients, I want you to be a sucker. I need you to be a sitting duck.
There goes that relationship.
That's right. Yeah. What we're really talking about is being accessible, being open, mm-hmm. being available, being receptive and responsive. So I had a fellow in a class in New York City. This is a construction management company. So this guy runs projects in New York. I mean, with big cranes, pouring concrete, hundreds of workers, electricians, carpenters, unions. And he and his team, their job is they're running the whole thing. They have to make sure everything happens on time, on budget, and that no one gets hurt. So he asked this wonderful question. We were having a conversation about all this in the leadership class. And he said, won't my people think I'm weak if I ask for their ideas? So I facilitated a conversation with some of the younger folks in the class. And they said to him, actually, we respect you more when you ask for our ideas. And they said, and we know you have more experience than we do. So in the end, we're going to follow what you think is the best thing because you probably just know better than we do. But when you ask us, first of all, it really motivates us because we want to be sure we want to be able to help. We want to be able to contribute. We want to pay attention. And we want to learn. But it shows us that you respect us and that you recognize that we might have something to contribute. And you could feel the connection happening. You could feel this team. People talk about team building. You could feel the energy of this team come together and a new level of trust and alignment happen in that room at that moment. Now, 30 or 40 years ago, that gentleman probably never would have even shared a concern like that. Mm-hmm. So he had to be open and accessible just to ask the question. And then he was open and accessible to the conversation that we had. So that's the kind of dialogue I'm speaking about. And I love facilitating that with real people in real challenging situations where that has not previously been part of their culture.
Woohoo! What is, and it goes along these lines, what's a high quality connection mindset and the importance of engaging in a conversation like that at least every day?
Yes. Well, high quality connections, HQCs, it's a term comes from the work of Jane Dutton, Monica Warline, Christine Porath's also done a lot of work in this area. It's the notion that, remember we said before, emotions are contagious? Mm-hmm. What do you want to catch and spread? So it turns out that little interactions ripple out, not only to enrich someone else's day, but also your day. So when you are kind and exchange a nice word with someone, I just flew in the other day from Denver, and I saw this guy reaching for his bag, and I kind of tried to anticipate which was his, and I was right, and I handed it to him, and he got this smile. We just eyes met for just a nanosecond. It's no big deal. But it turns out that this really strengthens your immune system. Mm-hmm. When people who have these HQCs, these high quality connections, they report. I love when psychologists call it improvements in perceived sense of well-being. In other words, they're happier people. And you can feel, obviously you're making somebody else happy. I mean, the guy was grateful, but learning to do that enriches your day as you experience these connections with other souls. So the more HQCs you can bring to your day, the more you can find a way to acknowledge or connect with other people, the more you are spreading positive emotion and enriching your own life.
So I can't resist. We've got so much to cover, but this segues too perfectly into bison, cranberries, and bacon.
Right. Yes. So I'm checking out of the supermarket and I move my stuff along until it's my turn. And that's when you look up, and what usually happens is the cashier looks at you, says, "Did you find everything all right? How's your day?" Some pleasantry that they're trained to say. Nothing. I mean, guy doesn't look at me, and he's really contracted and kind of sullen, and it was cold. So I thought, it's the exact moment. Wow, I'm writing this book on the art of connection. This is right when I was right in the heart of writing the book. This guy looks like he's having a really bad day. And at the same time, simultaneously, I noticed this, they have these impulse buys. They want you to just, I'll have that too.
Yeah.
But this was some bison cranberry something. I just thought that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. So I just took the risk of saying to the guy, I just said, "Do people really buy this?" I said, "Have you ever tried this?" And he's still looking kind of grim. He says, "Well, the taste is pretty good." But then he looks up at me, he says, "But the texture is disgusting."
A bonding moment.
Right. He just got the biggest smile. You could see him light up. Now, I hope it enriched his day, but I know I walked out of there and I just thought, these little moments, you're creating these ripples. One of Leonardo da Vinci's favorite images was a stone tossed into a still pond. And he would draw this. He would draw, as you watch it ripple out. And he'd say, does this ripple go out into eternity? Does it ever end? He didn't think so. He thought when you would ring a bell, that the vibration would go out forever into eternity. And it's the same thing with these HQCs, a word of kindness, making eye contact, a smile, helping someone else when maybe you didn't have to, ripples out, makes a better world.
This goes right into number 2, which I think is a lifelong philosophy of yours. It goes along with emotions are contagious. You want to be a glowworm.
Yes, that comes from Winston Churchill, who said, "We are all worms, but I do believe that I am a glowworm." Right. And you got to think about how one person's courage under almost, for us, really unimaginable adversity. I mean, it's hard to imagine the London Blitz, where London was being bombed by Nazi bombers every night for 57 nights in a row, and people had to live in the subway system. And, at that point, no one knew that the Allies were going to win the war against unimaginable evil. So one man with this amazing, gravelly, bullfroggy kind of voice got on the radio and encouraged the British people to persevere through this nightmare, which they did. So he's a phenomenal glowworm, and all great leaders are glowworms. They help others find courage. They bring out the best in people. They find ways to bring diverse constituencies together. They help people discover common values. So if you want to be someone like that, surround yourself with people like that. And to the extent that you can do that in real life, do it in real life. But now you can do it virtually. I mean, you can go on YouTube or whatever other service you want to use. And again, you have to be a really careful curator, but you can have, I mean, last night I spent time with Ramana Maharshi,
Mm-hmm.
Rupert Spira, Robert Adams, Papa G,
Yep.
and Jerry Seinfeld.
What a combination.
Because I always like to go to sleep laughing.
I love it. So I want to dive into more of the spiritual element here in a moment. But before I do that, one of your philosophies I think is really important to share with people now. I'll phrase it as a question. What if we're not born with being a glowworm?
Yes. Yes. Or what if we're not born with empathy? What if we're born very self-serving and very good at looking after our own needs, but not so considerate of others? Or what if we're born being too concerned with everybody else and not good enough at taking care of ourselves? So I referenced Jerry Seinfeld, and George Costanza actually sums up
the Costanza Rule.
Right.
Love it.
So it's the episode Do the Opposite. Do the Opposite, where George realized that if everything he's done in his life up till now has been wrong,
Mm-hmm.
then the opposite must be right. And he sees a beautiful blonde woman sitting at the counter at Monk's Cafe, and Jerry and Elaine urge him to go and talk to her. He says, right, yeah, bold men who don't have a job and no money and live with their parents don't go approach strange women. And Jerry or Elaine says to him, well, do the opposite. So he goes over to her and he's summoning up the courage and he says, hi, I'm George. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents. And she turns and says, hi. So as funny as this is, it really is an essential principle of personal and spiritual growth, which is find out your strongest habitual tendencies and do the opposite. In Jungian psychology, your opposite tendencies are called your inferior function. It's the part of you that just isn't developed, that you might not even be aware of. And it's where you might get really anxious. It's a stretch if you are an introvert to go and introduce yourself to people. If you're an extrovert, go for a walk in the woods by yourself in silence. So, I mean, that's what, I'm obviously an extrovert, and I go for a walk in the woods every day when I'm home in silence for an hour. So I've the richness of doing the opposite, of being, it's much more natural for me to be talking to people, Skyping, connecting, going to events, going to meetings. So no, I make it a conscious practice that I can't even begin to express how much it's enriched my life. And a lot of the people that I coach and help are more on the introverted or withdrawn side of the spectrum, very brilliant people, and guiding them on how to give a presentation. There's a reason it's the number one fear of the American public, greater than war or financial ruin. It's greater than death. Average person would rather be, according to the book of lists, they'd rather be dead and buried than have to give the eulogy. Right? But if we put it to them like that, then they'll give the speech. But the reason it's so terrifying is it really is the opposite of their habit. So first you have to become aware of yourself. You have to know yourself enough to know what your inferior function might be. Mm-hmm. What is your habitual proclivity? What fixations have you inherited? What is your wiring? What is your personality profile? But you are not your personality profile. That's just what that's just the first character you're playing in this movie. Mm-hmm. And then let's see, will there be character development in the role that you've been assigned? Or will it just be a boring, empty movie where you just run out the script and don't really take advantage of the theatrical possibilities.
Beautiful. From there, let's talk about what is the spiritual element of the art of connection.
So we've all grown up with the idea that there's one world and many, many different consciousnesses, and that these consciousnesses are just tiny little epiphenomenon that somehow came up out of the material world, the Big Bang, and then the earth cooled, and then one-celled little things happened, and then they became amphibians, and then they became mammals, and then they became primates, and then they became your next door neighbor, or you or me. Okay, but what if? What if there's just one consciousness and many different worlds? What are the implications of that for how we communicate with one another? So I can tell you're a walking the path of consciousness, and people we're sharing this with are seekers. So we want truth, we want beauty, we want goodness. The ancient Greeks, those things were all connected. Mm-hmm. But how do we experience truth, beauty, and goodness rather than just read about them in philosophy books? My study of those books and the teachers that I've been blessed to meet has led me to discover that from every tradition, whether it's Native Americans, Aikido, the founder of Aikido, Cambodian Buddhist monk that I spent a year with when I was 20, the Sufi master I met when I went to Turkey, Amma, the hugging saint who has given me darshan many times, or Mother Mira, or Sri Karunamai, or I've been blessed to meet a lot of these people. I met Krishnamurti, and I've read and studied. So I'm always just, whenever people from all these different cultures come up with the exact same thing. I mean the exact same thing, okay? There's one consciousness, and there are many different refractions of that consciousness. So what if we identify the self with the consciousness rather than with the refraction? What if when somebody asked Ramana Maharshi, how should we treat others? He said, there are no others. Now, it feels like there are. It feels like we're separate. Our whole world culture reinforces the notion of separateness and winning and losing and competing and dogs eating dogs and so on and so forth. But if we can shift our perspective and wake up to our own real nature, and I know maybe we'll have a chance to do a little guided journey on this.
Yeah, just before the end.
Because it's my real passion now more than anything else is guiding and waking up, remembering myself, and guiding my fellow sentient beings to all wake up to this. Because and I think most people have an inkling of this, even if even if it's not like your full experience of your life every day. I would love it if it was mine. It's not. I feel separateness all the time. I want this. I want that. Blah blah blah. Me. I'm aware of all that nonsense going on a regular basis. The good news is someone is aware of it, and I'm identifying more with the someone who's aware of it than the character who's whining in the movie. But we all need all the help we can get in our current wacky world to remember that for ourselves and others. But if you did shift your sense of identity from the separateness to the connectedness, which is, by the way, it's also Judeo-Christian teaching. The essence of Judeo-Christian tradition is it's love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy might, and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, why do you think those are the only two real essential commandments? Everything else is just details. And the reason is there's no difference between God and your neighbor. That and you. It really is all one. It's the fundamental prayer of Judaism. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu. It's, whew, that's it. Okay, so cool. What are the implications of that for how we speak with one another? What are the implications of that for how we interact with one another? What are the implications of that for how we approach relationship building? That is the spiritual element of the art of connection.
That is so beyond woohoo!
Yeah.
I am so enjoying having you on the show.
It's mutual.
I want to go take a few key words and make the most fun segue that I possibly can before we start to wind things down and get to that meditation. You brought up 3 words: truth, beauty, and goodness. So I want to talk about number 5, balancing energy, that truth, beauty, and goodness, and what happened to you when you met a beautiful young opera singer in 2004.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Truth, beauty, and goodness happened to me.
Where does balance? Because you went out on a first date, and maybe you can share a bit with that. But this is really when we bring it back to Aikido, and we bring it to martial arts, and we bring it to centering. Balancing energy is so critical.
So critical. And look, a happy relationship in the workplace, at home, in any context, is a relationship in which all the stakeholders in the relationship, all parties to the relationship, feel a sense of abundance, appreciation, gratitude, and joy. That's heaven. Hell is when everybody feels they're not getting enough, they're not being appreciated, they're not grateful, they're being taken advantage of, and they have to fight for themselves. And purgatory is where a lot of people spend most of their time. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. And it's about the balance of the energy exchange. So how do you craft an energy exchange where all the parties feel this sense of abundance and gratitude? Because I'm interested in helping people go from hell or purgatory into heaven, and then how to stay there. And I like that in a workplace, and I help my clients create more heavenly workplaces. But it begins right here at home. And it began on my first date with my beloved, who is just the amazing grace of my life. But when we met on our first date, I didn't even know it was a date because I'm 23 years older than she is. And I met her in a context of a seminar where I was one of the teachers. So the last thing I wanted to do was be presumptuous. I knew she was wonderful. I knew she was fabulous. And I thought, let's get together. And it's a long shot that this is romance, but that's okay because it's such a beautiful person. I just want to be as loving and kind and supportive as I can be with her. Anyway, so I picked her up. I made her dinner. I served her really fabulous wine.
And she got the wine.
Oh, yeah. It was really cool because at the time, she was a young artist. She was with the Pittsburgh Opera Young Artist Program. And I know she was, a good night, she was having a frozen burrito and a Corona. So I have her drinking a 1997 Chachi Piccolomini Brunello di Montalcino. But she's just the most natural, authentic, artistic person. She just describes the wine so accurately. And just so aptly. It was poetic, but so natural. And I'm thinking, this girl is really, really special. This is a really special person. Well, fortunately for me, she felt the same way. And she had said earlier in the evening, she said, I was getting ready for our date. And that's the first moment I knew it was a date. But then she puts her glass down and she looks me in the eye and she says, there's something we need to talk about before anything happens here. She said, the last person I was with was older than me and had more financial resources. And I often felt controlled and manipulated in that situation. And you're even older than that person and you're more successful. So I'm really concerned about the balance of energy and the balance of power in this relationship. So I paused and took a sip of my Brunello. and I said, from my heart, I said, look, the balance of energy exchange and relationship is as important to me as it is to you. I said, and whether you have the same amount of money, you're the same age or different age, you have different positions in society, balance is the essence of a relationship, and it requires open communication and dialogue. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm just really passionate about having that dialogue and making it part of whatever emerges from here. Well, that must have been the right answer because she just started kissing me. Woohoo! Woohoo! Yeah, and we've been together ever since. That was 13 years ago.
Awesome. One thing that you bring to the conversation, I know I got to wrap things down. There's so much. Everybody, you're going to want to go out and get the book. Get the book. Get the book. is one of the skills that you bring to the table that you encourage everybody to work on is presence. You weren't thinking about, well, what can I do and this and that and ulterior motives or any motives. You were present and hearing her.
Yes. Yes. And this is it's always something that people have needed to cultivate, but we need to cultivate it more than ever now. Because we're constantly being drawn away. Our attention is being drawn away to either something that has happened or that we think is going to happen or that might happen. So we're not here. We're somewhere else. But I'm telling you, whether it's a date with someone that could be a significant person in your life, mm-hmm. or just, I work with a company in New Jersey that remediates asbestos. And the guy who's in charge of their engineering division is a wonderful person. And we were talking about the fact that he doesn't have to take clients out to dinner anymore. He takes them out for coffee. And the fact that he gives his full attention to them, that he really listens, that he looks at them, he makes eye contact, he never checks his phone the whole time they're together. Mm-hmm. So therefore, first of all, he's way better at empathizing with their needs and then delivering the engineering services and the proposals that they need that will help his business be successful. So whether it's in business or in love or as a parent, this is the currency. Your attention and your energy, can you bring it right here, right now, without being distracted? And in order to do that, we all need to cultivate. We all need to practice because we're constantly being drawn in different directions. So that's why put these different practices in the book because we need support.
Thank you. If I took off my coaching hat, put it on you, and you've done a heck of a lot of coaching, I want people to leave today with one homework assignment. What one thing would you give people to do to begin connecting today?
I'd say to go to do a survey of all of the communications with significant people in your life, let's say, I'm just making this one up. This is not.
I like
you
it.
asked me, and I was just like, "What do people really need right now?" Because this will get you to embrace humility. Look at where things didn't work. Look at where you miscommunicated, misunderstood, where things didn't work out, and act as though you were 100% responsible for it. That it wasn't the other person's fault. Just get rid of the idea of fault. Just go back, do a review, and look for any patterns in what went wrong, and reflect on those. Because it's only when people feel deeply that, oh, I could improve this, I could be better at this, that they're really motivated to do all the rest of it. And it's like driving. Listening is like driving. Everybody thinks they're above average, and it can't be true.
Yet. Mathematically, I don't know how, but yet. What advice would you give parents today to help their kids with this?
Yeah. It's with parents, it's pretty simple. It's not what you say, it's who you are and how you behave. Don't talk to them about being a better listener, getting off your device. Get off your device and you be a better listener. They don't care about what you say. They're watching what you do. So if dad is fully present and loving and kind and puts mom's needs first, and mom is fully present and kind and puts dad's needs first, and when there's a conflict in the family, if we shift out of the paradigm of I win and you lose to how can we do a better job of meeting each other's needs, if we model empathy, then that's where it begins for parents. Yeah.
Awesome. And woohoo! What personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
It is. I'll tell you what. It was actually my conversation with you before we started the formal program, when you shared with me that you had intuited the subtle way in which the spiritual element of the art of connection was woven into the book. And when something that I'm here to share, I know is my responsibility or my duty or my dharma, when it connects with another jewel in the Jewel Indra network, so that it will magnify and reflect to illuminate the world, that's what gives me the greatest joy and happiness. I usually say, like when I'm in class and I just see the light go on in somebody's eyes, but since we just actually experienced that, I wanted to share the way you reflected that back, and how happy I get experience of happiness in that moment profoundly.
So maybe the best word to say with that is namaste. So on that, the perfect segue, where can people go to find your beautiful books and to find out more? Yes.
Start at michaelgelb.com. That's GELB, michaelgelb.com. And people can go to the resources page. They can find The Art of Connection, How to Think Like Leonardo. There's 13 other books. There's also lots of free content. There's articles and videos. We have a new YouTube channel. We're just working on it. I'd love to put this on our YouTube channel, if that's okay at the appropriate moment.
We can make that happen. There's a way to make that happen.
Yeah, cool. So michaelgelb.com is the place to go.
Fantastic. And before we do a really brief meditation, any last words of wisdom you want to share with people?
Well, the wisdom it's in the meditation, and it's sort of exploration. So let's just go right into that. I want to make sure we have enough time.
Absolutely.
Even though time,
and take your time. We're good on my side of things.
Okay, good. I just, I love the paradox. I mean, time doesn't exist, and yet we have to do a meditation on timelessness in a certain time. Welcome to the paradox of apparent existence.
The only thing I can add to that is
right.
So then take your time, since it's not real anyway, and we're having too much fun.
You can't run out of it if it doesn't exist. So just real simple. We don't need incense to do this guided meditation, and we don't need gongs playing in the background, although I'm all for it.
I'm going to have to start bringing one to the show.
Yeah, right. So people just raise their hand and do a little wave. I like to this. This is the wave of the Queen Mother of England. She used to do this, and this is the wave of the Pope. Right? So you do the Queen Mother wave. Do the Pope. So take a moment, just reflect on who did that. Who did that? What's the common answer? If I say who did that? Common answer is
I did.
I did. Yeah. So notice your thoughts. What's going on? What's the dialogue? Maybe people have been following our conversation and having thoughts about that. Whatever you're thinking now, notice your thoughts. Who's having those thoughts? Common answer. That'd be me. And then notice your feelings. Yep. Who's having them? I am. Now here's the thing. I move this. So if you are moving it or able to do the Queen Mother wave or the Pope wave or whatever other movement you do, are you that which waves? Are you the body? And if you reflect on this body, have you noticed that it's changing? You'll notice it more as the decades roll by. But it's a curious thing because it obviously changes profoundly from the time you're born. I mean, every day, every week, every month, boom, 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 boom. And then adolescence, boom, 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 boom. And then somehow in our culture, we have this idea that from between about 18 to 30 is what your body really is and what a body should be. And then you notice it's changing a lot after that, boom, 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 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then it's gone. So it didn't used to be here. It's going to be gone. It's changing all the time. Notice that your thoughts change. I mean, we all have some repetitive ones, yada, yada, yada. But the tape, what's playing on the tape seems to change. And sometimes there's some nice new ones and original ones. But it's kind of always changing. And it's pretty easy upon reflection to notice that our emotions are up and down and maybe seem to be affected by what the thoughts are doing or what the body is experiencing. So, body changes, thoughts change, emotions change. So the guided meditation only just begins now and continues for the rest of what we call our life. And it is who am I? And is there something that doesn't change? And what would happen if we shifted our identification of who we are from our body or what we're feeling or what we're thinking to the source of our awareness? And then what would happen if every time we interacted with or came upon another apparent different being, what if we shifted the way we see them from seeing them as a body or them as reactive thoughts and emotions and allowed that which we share, that fundamental source of awareness, to be present? Hmm.
On that note, come on, language centers, come back online. Thank you so. It's got to be more words, but we'll just keep going. That. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful. Truth, beauty, and goodness.
Amen.
Yeah, man.
Crank
Good.
it back up for the finish here. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the art of connection, and begin building those relationships today. And shine bright. Woohoo! Wow. Thank you so much, Michael.
That was awesome, man. That was really, really cool.
I haven't done that in years.
Just the whole room disappeared here. Yeah, that was great.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!